Okay, welcome to Lights Camera Barstool. Today we got a bunch of news for you. We have reviews of two movies in Hitman and Bad Boys Ride or Die. And we're also at the end going to have an interview. I haven't done an interview in a while with Lance Oppenheim, the director of Ren Faire, three-part documentary on Max, which I was enjoying. And he reached out and said, "Hey, I'd love to talk about it with you guys." So I'll be doing that interview after actually we're done recording this. So hopefully it went really good. We'll see.
I,
Uh,
I am very jealous of you interviewing that. The Ren Fair doc looks awesome.
you got to
Ren
watch
Fair
it.
in general looks amazing. It's something I've never been to, and I just know I'd love. I think I'd be one of those freaks that gets addicted to it,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's just there like nonstop.
Oh yeah. I've thought about that all the time. It's one of those things almost like for me playing video games like World of Warcraft is one I just never touch because I'm like that's just once you go down that road it's too you're going to be gone. And that's what I'm afraid of with Renaissance fairs. I'm like I can't do that.
Know thyself.
Yeah. Like know your limitations. So that's like going down like a K-hole for me. You know what I mean? Like I just can't do it. But their documentary is awesome. It's really cool. And like I saw it just because it was on like the front page of Max and like then when I go and like look at like the pictures for it and shit, they're all like, oh, it's like Succession, but in real life. And like it really is. It's amazing. It's like a real world like Succession story about the guy that started this Renaissance fair. And he's like
Wait,
insane.
all right. Yeah, I'm knocking this out this weekend. I got to stay in and do dozen stuff all weekend
Yeah.
on my computer, so that'll definitely be on in the background.
Dude, the guy that runs this fair, he's like a 95-year-old, literally insane person. And like all these people are vying to take over his Renaissance Fair, which is like the Texas Renaissance Fair, which is like the biggest in the world. And like it's incredible. Incredible.
It
He's
really
taking
does sound like the best job. What are you like? You get rich, you gonna buy a sports team? Fuck no.
nah,
I'm buying a Renaissance fair.
dude, and he's taking like big booby 25-year-old emo goth chicks to Olive Garden for dates every week. It's an amazing documentary. It's incredible to watch. But before we get there, the official list, the cast for Knives Out 3 got finalized. Mila Kunis, Josh Brolin, Glenn Close, Andrew Scott, Kaylee Spaney, Josh O'Connor, Jeremy Renner, Kerry Washington, Daryl McCormick, and Thomas Hayden Church, on top of obviously our good boy Daniel Craig playing Benoit Blanc with like long hair based off that first
Yeah.
photo we saw. Interesting look for Benoit Blanc.
I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm sure it's gonna work once.
Yeah.
I mean, just the more ridiculous Daniel Craig makes it, I think it's funnier.
Yeah, exactly. I tweeted and I don't know if you would agree with this. I think that Jason Isaacs playing his brother would actually could be kind of sick. Like
Yeah.
a competing detective agency for Benoit Blanc. I think
Listen,
could be
Ryan Johnson's gonna make, I think, like 10 of these movies. So
yeah,
don't
it's
put it
true.
out. Don't rule that out yet.
I remember he actually he did a video with like Variety or something where he like went through like people's like name suggestions for Knives Out too, and he liked mine. He read off my
Oh,
one. He
really
was like,
did?
I forgot what it was, but he was just like, "Oh, I like this one." It didn't use it, obviously, but what was the actual Glass Onion? Yeah, I don't think anyone was guessing that.
Yeah, I didn't love that title.
Yeah,
I actually don't really love the whole like having a different title every time, but
yeah. But cast obviously mega talented. A lot of super I would say like high tier actors, and then ones you would just like be like, "Oh, I wouldn't expect him to be in this, but that seems like a good fit." Like Thomas Hayden Church, I think is an example of that. Like not an
yeah.
actor that jumps off the page like, "Yeah, I want Thomas Hayden Church to be in everything." Not really, but like him in a movie like this, I think is a good fit.
Oh, and his voice. That's an elite.
Yeah,
That's an elite all time that nobody else has a voice like Thomas Hayden Church when he speaks. It's just hilarious.
yeah.
The question
Honestly,
is who do you I mean it has to have been Glenn Close, right?
but Glenn Close is up there. Yeah,
Has to have been.
yeah. And then also Josh Brolin, voice guy too.
Oh yeah.
Great
Man, there's a
voice
lot of
guy.
good ones here.
Kaylee Spaney, obviously, just on top of the world. She's in everything and is going to continue being in everything until it gets old, which is just the way Hollywood works now. Josh O'Connor, I think, kind of on that same train almost
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Mila Kunis feels like hasn't really been in a ton recently. She was in like one rom-com, I think.
I think she quit acting though for a bit
Yeah, to
because
be
of
a
her
parent.
kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which makes sense.
Yeah.
But
But
both of them are getting back in it.
yeah, this cast is this the best one yet in terms of cast?
I don't know, like Chris Evans and Ana de Armas being the highlight. Like,
Yeah. But Ano is such a unknown at that point heading in.
yeah, exactly. I think that those two. I think that original cast
Yeah,
was
that original
unbelievable.
cast is tough to
Yeah,
top.
really tough one to top. But looks great. Sony Pictures acquired Alamo Drafthouse. People were saying how Alamo Drafthouse houses were starting to shut down. Which so like I'm not a dine-in movie theater guy. Just never really have been to be honest. I went to one for the premiere of Pearl, and it's fun. I just think it's we talked about this I think last week. It's one of those things where it's good for the right type of movie. Like
Yeah.
it's if you're going to see Dune Part 2, I would never in a million years see that in a dine-in. But if you're going to see Inside Out 2, yeah, absolutely perfect for a dine-in theater with your kids or whatever. But apparently acquired by Sony Pictures, for it's the first Hollywood studio to own a movie chain in 75 years. It was illegal until 2020 for theaters to do so. Paramount decree in the Supreme Court ruling, which barred studios from owning theaters as an antitrust issue. Um, I mean, it's one of those things where like I don't know if this is a good like in my brain. I'm like, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. It's just I think Alamo Drafthouse people seem to like, and if they want to continue or keep it, bring it back to life, keep it on life support, whatever, sure, why not?
I think it's a great thing. I think this is the first domino for a positive first domino for the theater industry because now a studio has a vested interest in putting their movies into a theater. If other studios try to do the same thing, I know Netflix owns a few theaters, and I know they own one in New York, the Paris Theater. Like if Warner Brothers owned a chain, if they owned Regal, if I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to own anything that big, but
But then what
they
happens? Like if like
it
your Warner Brothers,
does become like an exclusivity thing where they're probably going to
yeah,
have to show like
Paramount movies are going to show at the Warner Brothers theaters. Like no, like is the Disney movie not going to be shown at the at Alamo Drafthouse for Sony? Like I don't know.
if I had to guess, because until 2020, obviously they said no because of antitrust issues. I'm sure those issues are still there, so that they probably have to show like 51% of the movie shown or the screen shown probably have to be other studios' movies. But
Yeah.
then the other 49% will probably all be whatever studio owns that chain's movies.
But then do they even manipulate that where they're like, yeah, we're giving you we're
Yeah,
putting this Disney
probably.
movie in our Sony theater, but we're only giving it a run of 2 weeks or some bullshit like that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
probably.
So that
Um,
that part of it I understand.
Also, Sony has more of an interest in this than I think other people because Sony does own Blu-ray, I think, right? So
That would make sense.
yeah, they're not and they don't have a streaming service. So this does make sense for them, but I'd love to see other studios kind of fall in line and really invest in the theater industry. That's the big thing.
If I will say that I think that having more theater chains to be able to compete with each other is definitely a good thing because that just breeds
Yes.
more of them doing actually trying to get you to go. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But the exclusivity part of it is what maybe throws me for a loop. Because like for me, like I like just being able to go to AMC and watch movies from every studio. But
Yeah.
like if I'm forced to go to like I mean, all offense intended, dumpy ass Regals like downtown to go see like a Warner Brothers movie, like that sucks. I don't
They're
want to
not
do that.
that bad. The Regal on Essex is great. It's the concessions that sucks. They're
They
nice
are
theaters. It's the concessions that you just stand there and you stand there for 20 minutes.
$200, dude.
Like you got to
No
get there
movement.
30 minutes early for a bag of popcorn.
It's insane. The first trailer for Doug Liman's The Instigators was released. Stars Matt Damon, Casey Affleck, Hong Chow, Paul Walter Hauser, Ron Perlman, Michael Stolberg, Ving Rhames, Alfred Molina, and Jack Harlow. Huge cast, mega talented cast.
Huge.
A couple people we've talked to before. It follows two robbers who go on the run with the help of one of the therapists after a theft doesn't go as planned. All set in Boston. Doug Liman, obviously, like a very talented action director, I would say, and like
Yeah.
action comedy director. I would like if you go look at Mr. and Mrs. Smith and all that other stuff. I like this trailer a ton. I like heist movies a lot. I feel like we haven't really had enough good ones. Like the last one that really stands out of note is like Logan Lucky, which was incredible, and not enough people even watch that. And it feels like it's been just a
Damn.
while since we get some of these, so I love it.
It has been a while. I haven't even thought of that. Is that really the last great heist movie? I feel like we have it tagged in on I feel like we have heist as a subgenre on movie
Movie
rankings.
rankings.
Let's see, even though that hasn't been updated since the Cold War.
Yeah,
Let's see what happens. Let's see what
been
happens
a
if
long
I look up
time.
heist.
I
Let's
doubt
select
it's anything recent, I would guess.
apply filters. Oh man. The most recent, like, all right, so it's like No Sudden Move, which was
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Army of the Dead, which was bad, in my opinion. You guys liked it a little bit more.
Like Den of Thieves, maybe, but that was the same year as
Yeah.
Logan Lucky, I
Whew.
think, or maybe the year after.
Man, it has been a while. That's a shame because heist, you can't really go wrong there.
It's such an
Always
easy
fun.
win. Easy win. And I think I like the fact that like you team up Damon and Casey Affleck have known each other for like 30 plus years. Like they obviously worked well together, Good Will Hunting, like everything else. I just think it's a slam dunk. Obviously, you get a shot in Boston, you're in Fenway Park for whatever reason. Just gotta insert it. Uh,
Yeah.
but other than that, I love it. Love the cast. Like Doug Lyman. Love the concept. I'm very, very in.
Is this going in theaters? I know we were talking about this before, and you
Yeah.
said there was a limited run. All right,
Limited run
good.
August 2nd, and then Apple TV Plus, I think the 9th.
Remember when Doug Lyman wrote that like manifesto last year
Yeah.
over Roadhouse,
Yeah.
which I was on his side until Roadhouse came out, and then I was very happy that movie was not in theaters.
That would have been a great theater experience. Oh my God. Can you imagine? Get me
Hi,
a sandwich. You would have loved it. You'd have added like 20 points if you saw that in
Knox.
theaters. If you saw that in IMAX, you would have been having the time of your goddamn life.
Maybe they'll put the second one in IMAX, 70 millimeter.
Dude, we can only hope it knocks out Oppenheimer 2 from theaters.
I
Uh,
hope this movie hits hard enough where Doug Lyman can finally budget Jumper 2. That'd be
or
nice.
or budget his movie that he's shooting in space with Tom
That
Cruise.
we've not gotten a single update on that thing in five
None.
years.
Nothing.
But
When they first mentioned it, I was like, this is gonna be the coolest thing ever. Haven't heard about it since.
speaking of Cruise, did you see yesterday that Warner Brothers added like a unknown sequel to one of their Warner Brother
Yes.
movies? Edge of Tomorrow? Edge of Tomorrow 2?
I don't know how you do that.
There was all those rumors that they were gonna
They
do a sequel
they
and
also
then
posted a lot about Edge of Tomorrow 2 recently, the Warner Brothers account. Because it was like
yeah.
I guess the 10-year anniversary of Edge of Tomorrow was this week, and they were posting about it a lot though.
And remember they gave Tom Cruise that big deal where he moved his whole production
Yeah.
studio like onto their lot.
And Tom Cruise tweeted about Edge of Tomorrow as well. And they were retweeting him talking about it this last week. You might be onto something actually.
I'm doing the winner.
Doing the Windhorse.
Why would they do that?
Uh Speaking of trailers, Paddington 3 coming into theaters January 17th. Wow, that's a really long time away. Paddington 1 and 2, just two of the most delightful movies ever. This doesn't seem to be much different. Although I would say that like maybe my not expectations, I guess, because it's a very different type of movie, but like the guy that directed these movies also just did the Wonka one with Chalamet, which is very
Yeah, Paul
like
King.
yeah, Paul King. And it was very like, yeah, fine. But like Paddington is just so delightful and such a
I
goddamn
also thought Wonka was fine, but you know what? General audiences fucking love that movie. They
yeah.
really did. And so the guy has like obviously a knack for this. Like he makes movies that no one can really say. I think even the first Paddington, which I didn't love, Paddington 2, I think far superior. It's hard to find anyone who will say a bad word about any of his movies so far.
Yeah.
Like they're just pure enjoyment. Um, so I mean, Paddington, this is a slam dunk. Although the January release, like you said, very strange, very
That's where you
strange.
dump the bad stuff usually
I
typically.
know, and they're putting
And
Mickey 7 in Warner Brothers, is putting Mickey 17 there next year too.
maybe that'll move again. Maybe that'll get a
Maybe they're
second
maybe they're
play.
trying to make January thing. Maybe that's
Yeah.
a new thing.
Start the new year. I don't know. But Paddington, delightful. It's like British people in general, like there's not a lot of range in that it's either disgusting, red-faced buffoons, animals, or like the most delightful country charm. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
like he managed to capture all of the country charm and nothing else, which I really appreciate from Paul King. We got our first look at Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, the anime, the untold story behind Helm's Deep hundreds of years before this fateful war, or the fateful war, telling the life of and blood-soaked times of its founder, Helm Hammerhand, the King of Rohan. Hitting theaters this December. Voice cast includes Brian Cox, which I think we knew, and then returning Miranda Otto as Eowyn, which I believe is like a flashback thing, right, or some such. Because
I think
obviously this
she's
is,
like the main character.
but this is like set like 100
Oh yeah.
years or something beforehand, so
Hmm.
can't totally be here, I guess. At least if it's as the character of Aowen. We'd talked about this as long as War of the Rohirrim has been in discussion. Seems like an awesome fit.
Yeah.
No limitations as far as like imagination and like what you could possibly do with the world building and all that crap. No worries about Peter Jackson having over CGI and orc because it's all animated. Love everything about it. Like Brian Cox being involved. Obviously, great voice. He's like a very like I don't know how to explain it, but he's just got the perfect type of voice for this sort of thing. And Miranda Otto returning is also cool.
Yeah, no, everything on paper for this, for me, it works. Like Lord of the Rings anime, hell yeah. I don't know much about the studio. I think they're kind of newer, but they have very good projects lined up. Like they're handling the Lazarus anime coming out,
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know when, but that thing is hyped through the roof, the thing that Chad Stahelski's doing. Um, So good studio, good voice cast. The story is canon. Like it's
Hmm.
already, it's a story that they're not pulling out of thin air, which it seems like they're kind of doing with Rings of Power.
Yeah.
So that's nice that there's like lore that they can go by. And I mean, it's just my kind of jam. The only thing that really worries me is the fact that this was announced basically so they could keep the rights to Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings, but like it seems like they're taking the right steps to do it right.
Yeah. And again, just like the world being their oyster with imagination is always a plus here.
I'd love
Uh,
to see it like go nuts and like we get more of this kind of shit moving forward instead of just like mindless sequels and prequels, and
for sure. It feels like
animation is a good avenue to do something fun.
it's a significantly less expensive, more creative way to be able to do stuff within an IP, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And I think you find like a lot of success in that in other avenues too. And speaking of which, another great original animated property, Arcane season
Oh
two. It's
yeah.
gonna be the final season as well, dropping on Netflix. Arcane was one where I'm like, I don't know anything about like League, any of this shit. I don't know anything about it. Loved it. Because everyone's saying you gotta watch Arcane, you gotta watch Arcane. It's like, all right, fine, whatever. Like I'm not invested in this, but I liked it. I had a fun ass time with Arcane.
I know. I was like, I watched it like I think the first week and it dropped, but I remember the trailers leading up. I was like, I don't know about that. I didn't like the animation style.
Yeah, exactly. The
It
CGI
looked,
animation has never been my thing.
it had like Imagine Dragons did the soundtrack.
Which is it kind of bangs. It's good. It's a
It's a
good
good ass
soundtrack.
soundtrack. The soundtrack is really good.
Yeah.
It's like really well done. Um, and then it turned out just incredible. Especially the voice performances. I think Haley Steinfeld
Yeah.
is one of them, and they someone else is in it too. Someone else big.
Uh Haley Steinfeld, Ella Purnell, who's in
Yes, yes.
obviously Fallout
She's
series.
Jinx,
Yes.
which is like the main character.
Yeah.
So and it ended up being fantastic. Yeah, one of the best things Netflix has ever done. Oh yeah, I forgot to add that it's also a League of Legends, right?
That's what I'm
League of
saying. I'm like, I
Legends.
don't know anything about League. That's why
Yeah,
I was kind of afraid
like
about
this
it.
video game anime. I was like, nah, I'm good. And then I
But then
watched it and I was,
Cyberpunk was amazing too. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It just makes I don't know. Maybe that's another thing where almost like where they were here. I'm like instead of maybe making a movie about this, like sometimes maybe animation is the way you can build out of something like I don't want to say like Red Dead Redemption or whatever because I'm Red Dead Redemption in my mind is something I don't know how you make that into a movie because it's so cinematic. But like if you were to do like an old West style like anime, that could be kind of sick.
that would be really sick. Have you ever
Yeah.
watched Trigun? I
Yeah,
don't know
dude,
if you,
fucking
yeah,
Vash the Stampede. Oh yeah.
yeah. Western looks, and I guess I mean even
Cowboy Bebop, dude.
Cowboy Bebop to an extent is just a Western. I mean, they have full on Western episodes. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I kind of like your idea, Ken
I
Jack.
mean,
You
it
might
could
have
work.
cooked on that one.
It could work. I mean, you could do anything, even like Bethesda stuff. I mean, like a Fallout one would work. I think Elder Scrolls, like any of that shit could really translate into that world really well. But Arcane was awesome. Definitely check that out. Again, if you're just like a general fan of like animation, whatever, like we were both super hesitant, don't like the animation style, don't know anything about League, still loved it, which I think is a huge, I guess, selling point. First trailer for Sausage Party sequel series, Sausage Party Foodtopia hitting Prime July 11th. I was never a Sausage Party fan. I like stuff that's crude. It was too crude for me. It was just like I was watching this, and when the first Sausage Party came out, I was probably like that had to be a while ago now. Like, but I was like I was in my young 20s. I should find shit like that hilarious. And I was like, this is too crude. This is way too crude, and it's just not for me. They invited me to go to like this whatever the piece doing the PR for it. They invited me to go to like this hot dog event they were doing in Times Square, and I'm just like, I'm good. I was like Jerry Seinfeld with Kesha or whatever. I was just like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. This looks awful. This
Yeah.
looks worse than the movie. And I'm with you on the movie. Like the movie had funny moments. Don't get me wrong. And like throughout the runtime, like it has very funny moments. But like in between those moments are like jokes that like I probably haven't thought are funny since I was like, or wouldn't have thought I was funny since like sixth grade. Like they
Yeah.
are just straight up like poo poo pee pee, come come.
Dude, like there's like
Like,
that whole sequence where all of them are like fucking and stuff, and it's like, all right.
yeah, and did you watch the trailer for this? It just looked like they're
Yeah.
just doing that throughout. Like you got like hot dogs putting their hands up an orange's asshole,
Yeah.
and that's the
Exactly.
punchline. And I'm like, okay,
It's 2016. Yeah. I would have thought it was even longer ago. But yeah, that was just not for us, I don't think. And I don't know who it would be for like an edgy teenager or something, but like I don't even
I don't
think they would
know.
think this is funny.
Crazy voice cast too.
Yeah. Very talented voice cast.
So maybe someone will like it. I don't know.
Yeah. The Boys will conclude with season 5, and Amazon will continue with Gen V as it's continuing to develop other spin-offs as well. I didn't watch the animated Boys spin-off. I did watch Gen V. Gen V was awesome. Blew away my
Yeah.
expectations for sure. I thought that was going to be like kind of like the jump the shark moment. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Especially because like The Boys was good, but it was definitely like the quality of the seasons were kind of like ebbing down, I would say, like a
Yes.
little bit. So I was like, maybe make sure you're shored up on the original series before you go and do spin-offs. But Gen V was great. I did the first 3 episodes of The Boys yesterday. I don't know what's going on with Laz Alonso, but like he has like Ozempic face almost. You know what I mean? Like he lost like a concerning amount of weight. And it was like I thought they recast him. I was like, look,
Mother's Milk.
yeah.
Okay.
Dude, like I was looking at him like I thought they legit recast him. I was like, what who the fuck is this guy? Why did they recast Laz Alonso? But it just no, it just lost a insane amount of weight. But yeah,
That's how I felt about. Well, I'm not gonna. There's another person on the
there's
cast
yeah, I know the other
that
yeah.
has done a lot of work to their face, and
Yeah. It's striking,
alarming.
alarming and striking and very concerning. But yeah, the other than that, I would say the first 3 episodes, kind of boring this season. Kind of fucking
I've had this concern with the show that it probably should have ended like 2 seasons in. Like
yeah,
how far can you really take this show with this writing? It doesn't feel like much further, and I'm glad they know to stop.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I'm like I'm much more interested. Let's put it this way, in watching the Ren Faire doc this weekend than I am in like firing up the boys. Like
yeah,
uh, especially this marketing campaign has just been ugh.
yeah. Well, like it's
Homelander's on the front of Time. Look at he's on Time magazine. Oh,
yeah.
look, they're posting top text, bottom text memes of Homelander online.
They've kind
Oh,
of become what they wanted to destroy in a way. You know what I mean?
yes.
Where like the parody is kind of getting blurred, and I don't know, this season especially, I think is definitely getting hurt by that, and it's just I don't know, it's just kind of boring. And
Yeah.
which is kind of a shame because especially like Anthony Starr, like that's some of the most like intense acting you'll see. And there is in episode 3, without spoiling, right in the beginning of episode 3, there's that big time like, it's not like a huge spoiler. I could tell you off when we finish recording
Okay.
this. It's like a very like, ugh. But yeah, so there's what you can look forward to with the boys. But I will say I'm excited for Gen V because I feel like that was way fresher and
Yeah.
it
The writing
make
was way stronger on Gen V than like it's been on the boys since season one.
big time. And I think they still haven't said whether or not they're going to recast the actor that passed away. I forget what
They're
they said
not.
about that. They're
They said
not.
they're going to have an in-show reason
Okay,
why he disappears.
gotcha.
But they're not recasting or doing anything like that.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. And then lastly, or second to lastly, the Acolytes episode 3. This is like the episode where
I have questions.
I'll have the answers that I have for you. This is the episode though when I watched the screeners where I was like, the discourse after this one is going to be miserable. And guess what? It's been about as bad as humanly possible. It is not people righteous, like justifiably being like angry at it, and then other people like taking it and running with it, and like to the point where the people who are reasonably like not liking the show are like, I'm not affiliated with you. You know what I mean? Which is something that happens in the Star Wars world a lot. But yeah, it is the weakest up of this of the 4 that I had seen so far. The next one I think is the strongest for whatever that's worth. But it
Okay.
was definitely the weakest episode of them all so far. What questions you got?
Okay, so my first question is, why does Kathleen Kennedy hate Star Wars? Why does she want to kill it?
Why does Kevin
Why did she kill it? It's
make it
dead now.
make it
Everyone
lame
on
and
Twitter
gay?
has told me that it's dead. Star Wars is over. Uh, Kathleen Kennedy led the charge on that. Dave Filoni is to blame as well.
Uh-huh.
Um, so from what I understand, we'll talk spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. So skip forward if you don't want to be spoiled.
There's a witch coven
Yeah,
that aren't Night Sisters,
not Night Sisters.
but they are Force related, and that's where Amanda Stedberg and her twin sister came from. Was
Yes,
a mother-mother relationship.
a mother-mother relationship with an immaculate conception, which is right justifiably pissing people off because this is one thing with Star Wars, the whole big thing, the prophecy,
Yes.
all of this shit is that, hey, this is a once in a trillion year. This has never happened before. Anakin is the Immaculate Conception child created by the Force. This is like a galaxy historical changing moment, and it just also happened to these twin girls, and that's like something where I'm like, I understand being very disappointed with
Yeah,
that.
it would be one thing, I think, if this happened in like the old Republic era, which I think is like thousands of years in the past, right?
Sure,
Yeah, and so that like just gets lost to history. People forget this is like 100 years before, right? This is like 100 years
not that
before
like
Anakin. Like this is
like a generation, like a couple generations removed. That's
so it's like
crazy.
this happened recently.
Yeah. And that's also like people when they initially this happened with like with Phantom Menace, right? People were pissed at it then. They thought the Force Immaculate Conception thing was dumb then. And now to just do it like, hey, you didn't like it then, we're doing it again and making it the original time less special. It's just none of that makes sense to me. I don't get it. I don't see the vision at all.
Yeah, it kind of takes the legs out of like a lot of like religious weight to the prequel trilogy and Anakin's kind of story.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. That's a very strange decision. It's surprising that it even was allowed. Um, I don't know. That is bizarre that they would have that big of a canon. I don't want to say breaking moment, but canon altering, or
It's like a
I guess
lessening, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Canon,
in a Disney Plus show. That's the weird spot to do it. Like maybe if this is in a movie, I can get it. Like carries a little bit more weight. Hold on,
yeah.
episode 3
The
of the
canon lessening event, and the kid actors are bad. And I hate to say that
uh,
because it's kids, it's whatever. You can blame, I think anytime a kid actor is bad, you can blame everyone but them, basically. You know what I mean? It's
yes,
literally children, but it's tough. I feel like really bad for so the guy from Squid Games is like utterly kind of wasted on this
yeah,
show. And like he's like kind of solid. And a lot of people have compared him to like Qui-Gon Jinn, which I think is a reasonable comp. And he also, I guess the actor's favorite Star Wars character is Qui-Gon Jinn, which also makes sense. And some of the other actors too have been very strong. It's just it's all kind of wasted on this. It's been like it's just not it's a YA series, right? It's
yeah.
for teens. That's something I think they wish they marketed way heavier going into it. But they didn't. It's not great. But the next episode again will be the strongest. So we'll just look forward to more of a rebound for the next one. Uh it's just this one was bad.
It sucks too because I do hear that it's just like not a good episode, but the fact that no one is pointing out that the show is like bad for these reasons and not like, oh, there's two women kissing on the screen.
Two
It's
women,
over.
a witch coven, what? Like it's
Like, brother, you
logistical lore.
do
It's
not
lore
want to see
choices.
my search history.
Yeah, exactly. That's the weirdest thing is that it's always like the most what do you call it? Very pro masculine whatever dudes that are just like two women kissing. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
dude, that
dude.
rocks.
Hell yeah,
That's
brother.
awesome. That's fucking cool.
Let's get a third in here.
Yeah, let's get more women, dude. But it's just it's not good. It's the lore problems I think that are more distressing here. And I think it's kind of exacerbated by the fact that all the actors keep going on all the press tour clips are make it look way worse, which to make this like as
That
abundantly
they
clear
gotta get a mic out of that director's face.
out of the director's face, she's been
Oh my God.
dude, she's been on a tear of just bad interviews, and then all of the cast just not knowing anything about Star Wars. Which, to make it very clear, that like you don't need to be like a Star Wars fucking like
No.
nerd to be involved in these projects. Absolutely not. In fact, our favorite Star Wars series so far, like I would say weighted average, whatever, in Andor, is directed by Gilroy, who doesn't give a fuck about Star Wars. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You don't need to do that. But I don't. I think that when fans see you actively pretending almost to like or like not pretending but like half in half out liking shit,
Yeah.
they don't like that. They don't respond to that well at all, and that's like it triggers like a I think a primal gatekeeping response, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
where like you don't think about it that way but like you kind of are. But it's just it's never good. You either got to take the Gilroy route where you outright say like I don't know anything about Star Wars, like I don't know stuff like you guys do, it's not my thing, or you
Hmm.
have to just say be that sort of nerd.
Yeah. I mean, it's like trying to talk sports with somebody who like kind of doesn't really watch sports, but they want to talk very confidently. Like they
Yeah.
like know what's going on in the league. Talking about sports with a woman is what I'm
It's
referencing.
exactly what you're talking with the witch coven.
Yeah. Um, they don't know
Also
pod racing. They
also
they
doing
don't know
the
pod racing.
doing the witch coven, but them not being the Night Sisters was also just like, why are we doing? We have an established very cool lore for this. Why go
Yeah,
off of that?
that's also surprising that like Filoni didn't tell. Apparently, this is like a Filoni decision to not have it be uh Night Sisters. He was like,
Yeah,
there's other witches, which makes me think that he just didn't want this shit tied into his shit.
touching anything that belongs to him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's fair. The one thing I am very interested to see in as we move forward is like, and I'm talking to Robbie Fox about this. Like Yoda is canonically like he's alive during all of this. I just want to see Yoda one more time. Let me get another look at you, little
Do you
green freak.
want which puppet of Yoda do you want, or do you want a
Phantom
CG?
Menace, the dumpy one. I
The
want the
dumpy one.
dumpiest
You want
possible puppet. Yeah.
the one that looks like that was literally bought at like Toys R Us.
Yes, like the most rubbery, shiny puppet that you've ever seen. That's the one I want.
Yeah, that one
Uh,
rules.
Frank Oz, all that shit. Like, that's exactly what I want. I don't want anything CGI, none of that crap. But yeah, it's just, I don't know.
It's
And for
exhausting. It's just exhausting to log on and defend Star Wars. Like it really is.
Yeah, and I'm not, and to be clear, I'm not defending all. Like, I would say there's parts of people are going to be blinded with hatred for it now. Hey, fellas, ever hear about the dark side? That's what you're doing. They're literally doing that. But like, I don't think you should be totally blinded by the bad aspects of the show because there is some of it that's good, but there is a lot of it that is bad. And I think that the Disney response to it, and then a lot of the, let's say like more blue check marky TV pundits and stuff, like them immediately defaulting to the same thing that it always comes to, which is like you actually hate it because you're a man and you're misogynist. And that bullshit just doesn't fly anymore. Like it just
Yeah.
never, it doesn't work. And I feel like Disney kind of throws these people up to fail, where it's like, hey, if we do this thing, it's gonna get us out in the word cloud by having like a lesbian character, or by doing this, and they
Yeah.
just like set these people up to get just shit on online, which is miserable experience for them. And I feel like that's just sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Uh, that's the Acolyte. Kinds of Kindness. I haven't seen it yet. Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie. Just all I see is Emma Stone dancing everywhere. What'd you think of it?
Brother, this is in terms of Yorgos Lanthimos movies, his like least accessible, which
Love
is
that.
fucking insane for a guy who made The Lobster, Dogtooth, Killing of a Sacred Deer. It is much closer to his earlier works. It's an anthology, which I think is out there and known. This is, by the way, I can talk about this. This movie's playing in Europe. Um, just a wild ass movie.
Hmm.
Some of the best performances you'll see all year. Like I think probably the all three of those lead characters or lead actors will probably all pull home nominations at
It's
the
Stone,
Oscars.
Allman, and who?
No, Allman's in there too, but much more minor.
Okay.
It's Stone,
Shout out Drake.
Clements, and Defoe.
Okay.
Are like the three main people from act to act, and they just crush it. Like it's like it sets up for them to like play wildly different characters each time, um, with varying levels of involvement, and they just crush it. Like it really is unbelievable how good they are. Now, will this play to like people who liked The Favorite and liked Poor Things? I don't know. There's some stuff in there that like are like no-nos for movies. Like you don't put it on screen and Yorgos spits in the face of it and
Just
like
does it
presses
anyway.
the gas and just goes straight through the wall. It's crazy. I think that probably makes Yorgos fans way more excited though.
Hmm. He
Like,
is just a weird little Greek freak. He is the
man,
actual Greek freak.
he is. This
Yeah.
movie is insane. Like this will be a very talked about movie. Stephen Shea should not see this movie. Stephen Shea should absolutely not see this movie.
There are a lot of I feel like unless you have the most straightforward movie possible, Chase should not watch it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
this one is it's funny, by the way. Outside of like the fucked up shit that happens, it's still just as funny as like his deadpan shit that he always has. Like characters just deliver lines and like they have facial reactions that just kill you. Even like my stuffy ass screener with like all the Chicago writers, they were laughing too.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, so definitely check it out, but I will say with trepidation, like probably don't bring your parents. Just know what you're getting into. There's some dark stuff in there.
Speaking of Chicago writers, I was thinking the other day, wouldn't Richard Roper be such a great porn star name?
Oh yeah.
That would be a
Dick Rope.
sick one. Dick Roper?
Yeah.
I mean, what was he? You should think about it as career change. The was it Che actually remember Che just shit on when we forget when we were talking about
Oh,
with
we said Richard Roper hated Unfrosted, right? You gave him
yeah,
you
yeah,
gave
yeah.
Richard Roper a review for Unfrosted. You were just read it an
I
honest
read
book.
his
And
review and Che said he sounded like he has a dump in his pants.
yeah, because he didn't like the Jerry Seinfeld Netflix Pop Tart movie.
Crazy. Uh, that's our news and little mini reactions. Now we do our reviews of Hitman and Bad Boys Ride or Die. I think we do Bad Boys first, just because it'll be like a little bit shorter of a conversation here. Bad Boys Ride or Die. It is the fourth in this franchise. Not a movie where I think anybody's like, well, fucking Bad Boys is like Mission Impossible. Late sequels are still like top of the line. Uh, Summary. This summer, World's Favorite Bad Boys are back with an iconic mix of edge of your seat action and outrageous comedy, but this time with a twist. Miami's finest are now on the run. By the way, that's the twist every buddy cop movie basically comes to eventually. You make enough of them, that's what happens. Will
They're
Smith,
just
Mark,
on the run.
yeah, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence back, Vanessa Hudgens back, and Alexander Ludwig, Paula Nunez, Eric Dane, the big kind of ad here as the villain, McSteamy from Grey's Anatomy, as many of you might know, or the guy, the number one twink reamer in Euphoria, as some of the other you might know, pissed on his floor or whatever. And then our good boy from Fantastic Four, Eon Grufford, is back as like I think he was like what is it, the DA or something?
All time. There's an all time moment he delivers in
Yeah.
this movie that I got to talk about.
Yeah. And then Jacob Scipio, I think is how you pronounce it, is back as Armando, which I believe is supposed to is Will Smith's son. So yeah, Bad Boys, Ride or Die, a movie where I went into where I'm like, Bad Boys for Life, which by the way should have actually been this one's title probably, or the last one.
Huge fumble, but I don't think they ever planned on making a fourth.
I agree.
That's the issue. Because the third one just overperformed so hard because it was like the last movie before COVID.
Exactly. And that movie performed very well. Again, like I think it was January 2020 release. It was one of the last ones we had reviewed pre-COVID. It was a movie where I was like, yeah, it's solid. It's pretty good. We liked
Hmm.
it. This one I think was better. This one
A
I
lot
think,
better.
yeah, it was pretty much every aspect of the last one was like improved. I would say the action was way better. I would say this action is on par with any of the best action in all four movies, or all three other three movies. Incredible action lines or funny lines. Humor was great.
Oh yeah.
Pretty snappy, I would say. Like not too doesn't really drag at any point.
Mm-mm.
Great set pieces for action. So production value was really high. And I think this is a movie that wildly impressed me. I was very, very impressed with Bad Boys Ride or Die. What'd you think?
Yeah, no, this I like the last one, but it is like without a doubt the weakest of the previous three and like a very missable movie in this franchise. Like I think I was telling people like who wanted to watch the Bad Boys franchise but didn't know if they'd have time to watch them all before seeing this one. I was like, you can probably watch a YouTube video on the third and like
Yeah.
you can skip that one. So it was fine. It was good. This one just absolutely shattered my expectations because I was expecting more of three. This thing is like on level with two for me. Like the action really, really blew me away.
Hmm.
They do some very cool stuff. Like the whole time they're doing different things with the camera, with the action. It's very practical, like a ton of practical.
Super
Wasn't
immersive.
expecting that. The sound design, fucking incredible for something like this. Yeah, no, like this is a shock. I really want to see these directors take on something else now. Because people said that Batgirl movie that they did was great, and then it got shelved, and then other
Yeah.
people said it sucked. I'm starting to think that movie probably was pretty good, based on how this was shot. And it was fucking hilarious. Martin Lawrence hasn't been that funny in 20 years. Martin
Hmm.
Lawrence was so funny in this movie. Him going through, and we'll talk about it in a second, I guess, in spoilers, but everything he was talking about was just killing me the whole time. Oh my God.
He had a great
I,
delivery. I think he was the only thing where I paused for a second because I thought they were trying to Roman Pierce him in Fast. You know, and they did that whole bit, and I think it was not the last Fast movie, the one before that, where Roman Pierce just kept being like, "Look, we literally can't die. We
oh,
can't
yes.
die."
When they
And
went to
it's just like,
space.
yeah, and it's like, okay, you're trying to break the fourth wall here. I don't know. It's not really from what it's kind of bullshit. But like, I think they played into it way better. And I
Yes.
think I agree with you. Martin Lawrence's comedic delivery in this was
And
a
it goes without saying, Will Smith, forget about the fucking slap for a second. Will Smith is just one of the most charismatic actors ever, literally
yeah.
ever. He just pops up on screen and he can't do anything but just entertain you. um,
Hmm.
he's just incredible and back against the wall here probably a little bit. This is his first what major release since the slap? Would it not be?
We're missing something. He had that Emancipation, I think, but
Oh
that would
yeah,
call that like
yes,
a, I don't know if
yes,
that'd be
with Antoine
major.
Fuqua.
Yeah, I don't know if that'd be a major release.
And that was direct to Apple TV, was it
Yeah,
not?
yeah, but
So yeah, this is like you could feel it. You could feel everyone had put a lot of care in this movie, which is
yeah.
not something I expected from the fourth Bad Boys movie.
I think,
I might go see it again this weekend, honestly. It was a very fun theater experience.
oh, for sure, it was awesome, and like everyone was having a really good time. I would say that the big scenes that stand out to me, the I think the scene where like they kind of use the security cam footage in the house with
Oh my gosh.
his like son-in-law was awesome. That was
Dude,
super cool.
that was the loudest I've heard a theater since No Way Home.
Yeah,
I'm not
especially
even
because the
kidding.
same actor and everything. It is kind of cool. It's kind of crazy, like that whole sequence
He
from like
killed
Bad Boys 2.
15 guys. I'm
Yeah,
not telling him he can't cook his chicken.
right at the end of the movie, that was very funny. But I think the way that they shot that, where they would like zoom in with him as he was doing the things, was very very cool.
Yes.
And then I think the whole third act fight scene was amazing on
Yeah.
like on like that little like beachfront cove thing, like super cool. The scene that like they kept showing the behind the scenes of that you see posted everywhere with kind of like the POV with the pistol
Oh,
was
the
sick.
thing with the yeah,
Yeah,
like oh, that thing was awesome.
that was super 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 cool, and like you were just saying, like a very practical heavy. I think that'll look great. Very innovative ways of like kind of shooting action, which is something like you wouldn't expect out of Bad Boys 4. You know what I mean? It's just you
But
kind of expect it to be boilerplate, but like they did some innovative things in the action, which is like something that kind of keeps it fresh.
yeah, I mean it was very Michael Bay inspired too, but like good Michael Bay.
Yes,
Like
the
the
best of
good
him.
yes, like the ambulance, the Bad Boys 2 of him, Pain and Gain. Like that's what it really felt like was like you got something very fucking kind of crude and funny here, and then we're gonna pan over here and just we're gonna blow your face off with some action.
The
And that's
best
what we're
of
gonna do
Michael
for two
Bay.
hours.
The
Yeah,
best of Michael Bay, Pain and Gain.
I like that movie. I really like that movie.
Pain and Gain.
Dude,
Uh
dude, I watched it like 2 weeks ago on vacation. It was just on TV, and I flipped it back on. I was like, "This movie rules."
Dude, it is the most like brainless, like little brain rot movie. It
Dude,
is so
Anthony
fucking
Mackie,
stupid.
Anthony
Yeah.
Mackie's balls don't work because he's taking
Yep.
too many steroids. The Rock is like a reformed Christian. Come
Yep.
on, Mark
It's so
Wahlberg is
stupid.
just. And I
Dude,
told you, I've said this a million times. Mark Wahlberg is the best. He's at his best when he plays a fucking idiot, and he
I
plays
agree.
a fucking idiot in that movie. Oh,
Tony Shalhoub. Very good in that movie.
yes, yes. He just won't. He gets Roman Pierce in that movie.
He
Just
does
won't
big time.
die.
Yeah. He's like fucking Rasputin in that, dude. It's crazy. But yeah, that's Bad Boys Ride or Die. I think we enjoyed it a ton. I'd been recommending it to anybody that had been asking us to see anything in the theaters. It kind of like saved the box office, which was in a dire strait this after
Yes,
Memorial Day weekend. Everything tanked. Furiosa obviously bombed. If which is when you have a kids animated movie like that with like big names attached to it, like Reynolds and Krasinski and all these guys, like that should be a bomb. Or not bomb, rather, like good type of bomb. It should be
yeah,
amazing. And that
yes,
tanked. Garfield didn't do like what it probably should have done. And then this movie just came in and made like an easy for an R-rated action movie, fourth in a franchise, late sequel. It made like I think like $60 million domestic in its opening weekend, which is amazing.
yeah. I think Inside Out too is doing well too. I think it's on track for
Yeah.
100 this weekend, which is
The
great.
previews were insanely high. Yeah.
By the way, the moment I have to talk about from Bad Boys 4 is when Ian Graffolt's character blames teaming up with the cartel on 9/11.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's like then 9/11 happened and everything. No one cared about this anymore. It's like,
Great. Oh, so great.
yeah, fucking, oh man. That
Dude,
was really
that
funny.
was a very funny movie. You were a donkey in your past life. I didn't want to tell you this.
You're
You had
stubborn as a
hooves.
mule.
Get your hooves off me.
And what he's like, I mistreated you. I'm trying to tell you I wasn't right to you. Like
I
it
knew
was
we were
funny.
in for a treat. Like when 5 minutes in, he has a heart attack
Yeah, at the
doing the
wedding.
fucking wobble.
Yeah, at the wedding. Do RIP our boy Joe Pantoliano. I don't even
Yes.
captain or whatever. We don't even know. But RIP to
Yeah.
our boy. Did like it again. I don't think either of us are any much bigger Bad Boys fans than the next person, but both of us enjoyed it a ton. I would highly, highly recommend watching it in theaters versus almost anything else in theaters right now.
Yes.
Other than like if you have kids, obviously go see like Inside Out too. or whatever else. And what are we missing? What else just came out that we were just talking about? You asked me if I saw it yet. Shoot. What'd you just ask me earlier if we had seen it, if we were gonna review that? What was it? It's Twisters.
Oh, I meant like the other one, the original one. Because that's the movie I picked
Oh.
last week.
I was gonna say, I was like, damn, I didn't even know that was
Because I
out
didn't
yet.
know if Clemmer and Robbie were joining us
Gotcha.
today or not.
Yeah, no, not yet. But Twisters, that's gonna be a fun time. It's the fucking summer of Glenn Powell, baby. Nobody can stop this guy. And
No,
he's telling like urban legends as if they're real on podcasts and stuff. He's the best himbo, dude. I love this guy.
dude, that rule. I can't. I was taking notes of who I follow that believe that story. By
Yeah.
the way, I
I
was
want
like,
to tell you guys the story I heard about Marilyn Manson. He, he had a rib removed. It's crazy. Sucked his own cock. Like, all right. But I love this guy. Obviously, we interviewed him before, but it's amazing. So now we have Hitman. Motherfucking Hitman, a movie which I think we were super highly anticipating. Obviously, with Linklater is an amazing director, and like we just said, it's the summer of Glenn Powell. It's an interesting story. Professor moonlighting as a hitman of sorts for a city police department descends into a dangerous, dubious territory when he finds himself attracted to a woman who enlists his services. Glenn Powell, Adria Aronia, among other people, I think Coretta and a couple other actors and actresses. It's a movie where straight to Netflix. You saw it in theaters. I wish I saw it in theaters. I should have. It was a dumb move not to go see that when I still could have. Um, this one I think was maybe I was a little afraid, not because of Linklater, because Linklater is obviously very good, but where I'm like, is Glenn Powell gonna get a little overexposed here? Is he gonna
yeah,
be a little? He's a little too hot, and now like this is what brings him back down to earth. I don't think I've seen an actor have more fun with a role than Glenn Powell had in The Hitman, Aaron Hitman. This is a movie that is super fun, rom-com slash dramedy slash crime movie slash a little bit of everything. It is fucking a blast. It is a blast of a movie. Very like not like uproariously funny like with goofy ass lines like Bad Boys or anything like that. Like it is very, I would say, like good funny, quiet funny, like soft funny. Uh,
mhm.
Expertly acted, I think, across the board, especially between our two co-leads. And it is just, I recommend that movie to a lot of people. Although I will say, there are a couple people here whose movie opinions I would say like I usually am in line with that hated Hitman. And I was
Hated it.
yeah, I was
It's not a
very shocked.
hateable movie.
That's what I thought. I was like, I don't know what you can really hate about this, except for one thing, which I think we'll talk about in a bit. But
Yeah,
there's I don't know how you can hate it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I watched it with my fiance too, who usually doesn't like anything outside of like certain genres. She loved it. I think it's a great movie. I really had a
great
fun time
date
with it.
night movie. Big
Great
time
date
date
night
night
movie.
movie.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm like you. Glenn Powell was a person that I've liked in everything he's done so far. Like obviously, I love Everybody Wants Some. His character in that's great. Finn. Top Gun, great.
Devotion.
Devotion, great. But I was like, is the movie star hype being manufactured by just people online? Or is he actually a movie star? Movie star. He's a fucking movie star. This is what cemented it for it. Like he has to do a lot for this movie, and he just crushes it. Like he does more than what's required. He is so goddamn good, playing Gary and Ron, which is like it's almost unbelievable he can pull that Gary character off, and it plays. Like you know what I mean? Like
That's what I was afraid of.
They Clark Kent him, and it works. Like you're like I don't know if he like would be a loser in real life because he's just so handsome. But you know what? This is so endearing and so funny listening to him talk about his fucking birds. Fuck it. Yes, I love this character. And that is like the mark of a movie star. Just like with Will Smith, he just pops up on screen and he's just entertaining. Glenn Powell, I think, has that. Like it
Hmm.
is just you got it or you don't. Glenn Powell has it.
Hmm.
Adria Arjona, you are the hottest woman I've ever seen.
Jesus Christ, that was crazy.
Dude, the way Linklater shoots her is perfectly like keeps her like in a bar, like with the neon lights hitting her face, close up shot, just staring straight at Glenn Powell. You're like, I
Dude, the
might
eye contact.
my knees might buckle here.
The
Um,
eye contact had me folding like crazy, man. It was
yes,
insane.
yes, the chemistry between them is fantastic,
Some
which
of the best
doesn't
I've seen in a long time.
yeah, you don't get that very often, at least anymore. I mean, we saw it with Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney,
Uh,
which is a movie I like, but I don't think they had like knockout chemistry like this.
Like Fall Guy, I was like, wow, that's really refreshing chemistry. This is like truly refreshing chemistry.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Um, yeah, no, this was a great time. I can see where people have complaints at the end. But the whole way through, man, this is like you get to see him dress up as like different fucking like characters and just like do absurd shit. It's great. I don't know.
Hmm.
The dialogue's fast and witty and like not cringe. Like it's just great. The side characters are great. His
Hmm.
people in the van. What's her name?
Retta. I don't
Yeah.
know the character's name in the movie, but yeah.
Yes, she was great. And then Austin Emilio, who's brought back from Linklater, is also Everybody
Yeah.
Wants Some. I thought he was great as kind of the scumbag PI or whatever you want to call him. I guess
Yeah.
not PI, but whatever,
Yeah.
undercover agent.
He was I think very funny as like just like the I don't know how to explain it. But like
He's
he's the
like those
perfect
teens
scumbag.
deserved it. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like those teens deserved it.
Yeah, he's the perfect scumbag. And I remember him, he was actually really good in Walking Dead as well.
Yeah,
In those like early
that's
seasons.
what everyone was saying to me.
Yeah. I mean he's like a scarred face and shit. It's really cool. But yeah, so everybody Hitman, I think, is one where if you are looking for like a date night movie, it is perfect. You can't find much better than that. Um, the big pros, I think, are their chemistry. I
Yeah.
think the humor lines in this rocked. I think the disguises were very funny. The way that they kind of spaced those out to kind of like play into like his psyche and like his
Hmm.
job and everything like that. I think the little breaks into the his psychology courses where you see his evolving
Hmm.
psychology on his own work, very smart, super smart.
This is a smart script. I
Yeah.
mean, goes without saying with Linklater, but Glenn Powell was a co-writer on this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it played perfectly. And then I think kind of like how the situation devolved was also very interesting. Like how it kind of all comes to a head. I think it was
Hmm.
very smart the way that all played out. I think my only or my biggest complaint would be I think the ending of the movie was very sudden. It was like
Very.
it felt almost in the way that the movie was paced, it felt like the climax of the movie was closer to like the middle climax, if that makes sense. It felt like I was waiting for the next shoe. I was like, oh
Hmm.
wow, this is a really cool moment. How does this get resolved? And it kind of just like, oh, we're done. And like that to me was kind of just like off-putting in a way where I was just like, we needed more than that.
The scene
And
where he has to go to the house and basically interrogate her,
yeah,
fake interrogate her. Yes, yes.
and like,
That
well,
that's a great moment. But yeah, it felt like that was where things would turn into the third act. But it's kind of you. I guess you're already in the third act at that point, and it just
exactly.
wraps up very quickly soon after that.
It's very much like a movie that's ended in the second act.
Hmm.
And it didn't. I don't know. Like the movie, like the credits rolled, and I was like, wait, what? Like that? What? We didn't get a resolution really. Like, and I don't know what the necessary thought process is with that. He, I'm trying to think of like what else maybe the thought process maybe could be for trying to end a movie on that note, but I can't. I don't even know what it was. And they based this on a real story, but the real story ended with him turning away. Like the guy that plays Gary,
Yeah.
he like he met like a hot woman who wanted to kill her husband, and he basically said, "Don't do this," and that was the end of the story. But like Linklater had read that story and said, like, "Oh, well, what if they started dating after?" And then like that's where all this came from. So maybe he just didn't think couldn't find a good the kind of way to end that sort of storyline, which is fair. But like I don't know, I don't feel like that was the correct way and easy to say. I'm a dipshit, not the one making millions of dollars to make movies. But I just didn't feel like that was the way to end a movie.
They got away almost too easily, is what we should say.
Very
That's
easily.
honestly like what it was. They got away way too easily. Like
Like,
a very convenient heart attack.
mhm. And like due to a poison, which would be very easy, I think, to find in an autopsy report, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So if this movie was set in like the 80s or 90s or something like, which is when I think the Gary guy was doing all this shit, like yeah, sure, stuff's a little bit harder to figure out. But yeah, I don't know. In like 2024, someone getting away with that, I feel like it's just not happening.
No, not at all. But I
Yeah.
that's like I gave it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd, so like around a 90. That entire half star is being subtract where it came from is that ending. Like I
Yeah.
definitely wanted like maybe a little bit more conflict there. Like make them work a little bit harder to get out of that mess. Because I love
Yeah.
the part when he's like, with the note app and he's like scrolling through and he's like coaching her up
Emoting
and
her, yeah.
yes, that was fantastic. But then it just like it kind of loses all steam after that, and it's just over.
Yeah. And just very like I think they wanted the big punch to be the pie line at the end,
Hmm.
which by the way was also real. Apparently that was his Gary's real thing. But the
Oh,
that pie line didn't hit like an ending should. You
no.
know, it's I don't know. But I
Even
like
with that song, what's that song called?
yeah, fuck.
They use it at the end of Wolf of Wall Street too. Um,
Um,
da, 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 da,
God damn
da,
it.
da, da.
What the cast your fate into the wind? Is cast your fate to the
Yes.
wind? Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, other than that, other than the ending, which I know my people might be like, oh, well, that's like devastating. I think this movie was so good that it didn't really like devastate my view of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I still look at this movie very fondly. I'll definitely watch it again. Even
I
though like
I
I know
already
the
rewatched it.
yeah. Even though I know I don't particularly like the ending, I still want to watch again. That's how good this movie was.
Yeah, and like at the end of the day, this is a rom-com, and
Hmm.
I'm not going to complain about getting a happy ending.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what they have.
Yeah, I was expecting, and maybe this is like a way of subverting my expectations. I was almost expecting one of them to end in jail at the end and then still be married in jail, like writing each other or whatever, like doing that thing up against the glass or whatever bullshit.
Yes.
Or like they're on like opposite ends of or like a defense meeting of a men's and women's prison or some made up crap like that.
Or like
Uh,
flee the country or
yeah,
something. Like she flees the country, he meets her later on, like a year later or something.
yeah,
Something, you know. They
exactly.
just have two kids.
By the
And
way, I
she's
don't,
like, I could strangle her. And her like face lights up. I'm
yeah,
like, okay.
I don't
She's
know
still killing people?
I don't know who played her ex-husband, but that was also the perfect like weenie casting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That guy was
Yeah.
a total weenie. And that whole scene at the bar, I think, was very well done. Where like
Yeah.
he like confronts him, whatever. He's like, the guy's like, come on, Scott, no, don't do it, dude. And he's like, no, I gotta fucking tell her. Like that scene, I think was awesome.
And they're
Very well
walking
done.
back to the bar and he's like, not cool, bro.
Yeah, it's very funny. Also, love a movie that sets itself in New Orleans for better or for worse, just because like we know that tax haven, baby.
Yeah.
Even though it might, I think the guy, I don't know if the Gary thing was in New Orleans or not. But yeah, Hitman, very good movie. Definitely watch it on Netflix. I think its theatrical limited run is over. Question mark. Not sure.
Probably. Probably.
Yeah, I
It might
thought
be
you,
still playing at the Paris Theater, like I was talking about earlier, Netflix Theater.
dude. I saw the Paris Theater get shit on Twitter the other day. Did you see
Oh
that?
yeah, because of
You're playing
the
like a
Ari
stream.
Aster. Oh, that
No,
reason.
okay. So two things.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there was
So you
one guy.
want to talk about that really quick?
There was two separate things. There was one guy that went to there to see like some like play they were playing like an old movie or something at Paris
Hmm.
Theater, and the movie stopped and buffered because
Yeah,
over the
that's
projector
crazy.
they were streaming the movie. A movie which by the way there exists like HD like Blu-ray copies of and everything like that. Crazy move on its own. And then I read most of the story. There's a big fight outside of the Paris Theater
So funny.
after an Ari Aster I think it was a Hereditary screening, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and
And
well,
he did a Q&A afterwards, which by the way, Ari Aster does these like all the time in New York City. He frequently does these. But anyways, people are lined up and the way Q&As work, you usually only there's like Q&As is very generous because usually there's only like one or two questions at the end. So whoever gets asked or whoever gets to ask the question, it's a big responsibility. Half the time it's a terrible question, half the time it's okay. This time somebody tried to ask how how do you become a filmmaker, which is just a ludicrous question.
yeah.
That's like how does Ari Aster sit up there and answer this question? So everyone just boos this guy, boos and like
Boot him to hell.
mercilessly, yeah, booed his ass. Which fair, like if you're gonna put yourself out there, you got to be ready to face the consequences. This pours over into the street outside the theater. It's right on the East River Loop at the bottom of Central Park. People are out there, and I guess the guy who had asked the question was still kind of defending himself, and another guy was like, "All right, fine, let's make up." And then he like went in for the hug and like gave him like a nice little like Italian tap on the cheek, like you're my familia.
Which know your audience, by the way,
This
before
guy
you
came up
attempt to
swinging.
tap like that. Yeah.
The guy did not take it as a friendly tap. He took it as a let's fucking throw hands. And these two theater nerds were just swinging on each other. One was shirtless,
Dude, he got his shirt ripped off.
dude, which like kind of respect because like people talk a lot of shit online and they'll never throw hands. These people were about it. They
Yep,
were throwing hands over an Ari Aster Q&A.
dude. That's I would have out of all like weirdo A24ish directors, like Ari Aster fans would be the ones to do it. You know what I mean? Like they're the
That's
ones
fair.
that they'll throw down.
Yeah.
If you're watching movies about just like endless grief, every single day you go to your director, like, and yeah, you're gonna throw down.
Yeah, that was funny. I'd love to see more of this in the New York City theater scene, all theater scenes. If you hated the movie you just saw or you were upset by something, just come outside and let some steam off.
Let her rip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just fight with somebody. It's a designated fighter. But yep, that's the episode for now. Go stay tuned. Hear an interview with Lance Oppenheim. Okay, Lance Oppenheim here to talk about Ren Faire. When the aging king of America's largest Renaissance festival declares his retirement, an epic power struggle ensues to claim his throne. Three-part series all on Max right now. I didn't know what to expect from this series at all, and I have been absolutely loving it. So happy to have you here, man.
Dude, it's an honor. Thanks, man. It's good.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Super excited. For me, watching Ren Fair, like I don't know anything really about Renaissance fairs, and I assume that like behind the scenes would kind of be similar, almost like a Disney or another theme park, where it's just kind of like a bunch of corporate guys in suits making decisions on Excel, all of like super analytical, like nerdy guys. What kind of like tipped you off that this was not that kind of situation?
Well, it happened fairly early into the process. There was two reporters, a guy named David Govey Herbert, who's a really great kind of narrative nonfiction freelance writer, and his researcher Abigail Rowe. And the two of them came to me with basically almost a one pager that was sort of like, hey, there's a guy who created the largest Renaissance fair in Texas. He's now 87 years old. And he doesn't just play the king at the fair. He actually, in some ways, is like a self-made king. He owns the fair. He owns the city around the fair, which he incorporated. He's the mayor of the city. And he has thousands of people that essentially work for him and cower in fear, at his decision making. And so to me, my first thought was like, it kind of reminded me of like that Twilight Zone episode, It's a Good Life, where the child is turning people into, inanimate objects. Just the same sort of dynamics. And so to me, that was the thing that first made me want to go, was just George, the allure of him. And the setting kind of came to me, obviously when we were there. But I guess the opportunity to do something that was sort of like the drama that these people are going through almost resembles this fiefdom, or like this kind of the play pretend world that they're doing. The underlying drama that actually would be associated with the period is happening in real life, kind of in this present tense way. And that was what was incredible and crazy and made me want to, make the thing, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's like the most compelling thing about this docu-series, is that the show kind of like blends. It's like a blending of like kayfabe, right? Or like these like people are acting like sycophants for this king, like you're saying, right? But in real life, they just are. Like that's like kind of just what they are. They are sycophants for this real guy who leads the show. And it's kind of like this Game of Thrones like drama with all these like ambitious people coming for the throne. Did you think like, and this is something I feel like I picked up on, a sense of like these guys, a lot of them come from like maybe a bit like a little bit of like a drama background. Do you think they had a sense of like a flair for the dramatic, so to speak, like while you guys were filming it?
Oh, 100%. I mean, even when we weren't filming it, it was sort of like the way that Jeff and Louis and Darla would all sort of associate their lives. They knew what they were going through was abnormal. And like me, they associate virtually everything in their lives with movie references, which was perfect, because as a filmmaker, I feel like my job is not just to sort of observe reality. I want to inhabit the same sort of, subjective headspace that someone is going through when I'm making a film. To me, it's like what documentaries are. Any documentary, whether it's like a Frederick Wiseman movie or a fucking, I don't know, something you see on Netflix, it's still a creative treatment of reality. And so I like making that very clear. And I like making things that are very collaborative. And, going back to like my favorite filmmaker, Abbas Kiarostami, who made this amazing film Close Up. The thing that movie taught me, and that I feel like I really was trying to play with here, was that just because you're reenacting something, like let's say in the end of the first episode when Jeff gets this phone call that triggers this sort of ego death, just because that's sort of a reenactment doesn't mean that it isn't real. And the movie Close Up, you see this all the time. It's literally a reenactment of an event that happened well before the filmmaker showed up. And what he tries to do in that film is to show a different kind of truth that can only happen through reenactments in a way. And I'm shooting this movie. Our show is literally set at a reenactment theme park. So, you know, like there's so many different layers of things that are going on. But the thing that I was always just very interested in here was like, I want ultimately to see the sycophantic nature of the way these people act towards the king. But I also want to hopefully crack that somehow and see something much more painful and emotional and relatable on the other side of it. And I think using this kind of artifice or just like this performance and letting people play into it, and people like Jeff letting him play towards the camera, I think it like gives the series this bizarre enhancement, this heightening of the drama that is very real to them, but becomes weirdly even more entertaining and cinematic, I think, to an audience.
Mm-hmm. What do you think made these, like this whole cast of characters, like sort of eager to give you guys access? Because to me, like when I'm watching, like George kind of seemed to lack the shame that a lot of these other guys have, but like the other guys didn't seem to mind, like the Jeffs and the Darrows and all them. They didn't seem to mind like kind of throwing out their vulnerabilities out on camera. Like, and for them, like why were they so kind of, I guess, eager to show that to you guys?
Well, I think with George, I think you're right. I mean, I think George, his MO ultimately was that he sees himself as an American icon. And I don't think anyone really, I feel like he hadn't felt like anyone had recognized that. I also think he's just genuinely and a very lonely person, because every single person that works for him is an employee. And at the end of the day, his relationship with them is completely transactional. It sort of ends with he'll ask them for an opinion, but usually that opinion affirms his own opinion. So I think having us there was like maybe the first time he was able to engage with a captive audience, but still I was able to kind of give my opinions of things, and I wasn't sort of, you know, kowtowing to his every desire. With Jeff and Darla and Louis, I mean, I think it's different for each of them. I think for Jeff, this was like, I think he was so excited by the opportunity of it's almost like what he says in the first episode. He's talking about Daddy's dying, who's got the will. The emotions that he experienced because his father died in the middle of that rehearsal made his performance in that show extremely real. And so there's this weird blending. It's like what we ended up experiencing with him, and we could have never predicted that like what we thought was going to be a comedy would become a tragedy, right, by the end. But I think because it became so tragic, the documentary and our presence there and the fact that I got so close with him, I share the same birthday as him, you know, it's like and I spent more time with everyone there than I did with my own family, and you know, for almost 3 years. I think like there was this it almost felt therapeutic to have us bear witness, I think, to sort of the pain, this pain cycle that everyone's trapped in. And even just seeing some of like the Facebook comments from other people who used to work at the fair and people who used to be general manager there, it's like the story that you're seeing in this series is just one revolution of a really very, you know, very long cycle that's been happening for decades. And so I think that's the other dimension. I think ultimately once things started really going off the rails and George acted increasingly erratic around everyone, I think for people like Darla, who was initially really annoyed by our presence, I think she was really excited to have us there, just to, you know, almost as kind of a form of protection, that like when George acts this sort of way, it won't just be in a vacuum. Like people are going to see this, and people will have, they'll have opinions on the way he kind of conducts himself.
Mm. It is kind of interesting too. Like you mentioned, as everyone progresses, you're kind of expecting like, yeah, there's gonna be like a winners and losers involved, but kind of just everyone is just kind of in this repetitive. Every single cast of characters in this pain cycle, like you're saying. Everyone is sort of the loser, including George, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately George entombs himself with the festival and everyone in it, just like you know, an Egyptian pharaoh would, like, you know, however long ago that was.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of and that's really what the series is ultimately about. It ends up becoming much more about like what power, you know, what power can do to a person. You know, what it does to people who have it, and what it does to people who don't have it but desperately want it so badly that they're willing to, you know, essentially endure the suffering that maybe would, that accompanies that chase. It's like this windmill, like in Don Quixote or something. So
Mhm.
I don't know. To me, it's like the design of the series ultimately, because we're trying to Trojan horse these fairly like dark and depressing ideas, even I think that go beyond the fair and really look at like, I think like the gerontocracy that we're living in with all these aging leaders around us, and not just politically, but like, I don't know, and even look at like this Paramount deal that just went under a few
Yeah.
days ago. It's literally just exactly like what George did with his
Mhm.
deal, right? Or you look at just like the nature of like work and how I feel like some people just are kind of conditioned to actually enjoy the suffering and just kind of be opt to choose to live inside of a situation like George has. I think there's something much deeper that's like going on in the show than just like who will be the next person, who's the next king, or who's the Kendall, or who's the
Yeah.
Shiv, or any of that. It's like ultimately these are real people's lives, and what happened there, even though it's creatively represented and heightened in certain dimensions, it's all real. Like there's no moment in this that's fake. Even the dragon that's talking to Jeff, like those are thoughts that he told me, that those very thoughts, like, come on, Jeff, you got to do something. You got to speak to the king. Those are words that he said to me in an interview that I had shot like about 40 minutes before I dragged the dragon into it. Right. It's
Mhm.
never like I'm putting things into people's heads that aren't there. It's all there. I'm just finding other ways to sort of creatively express it after it happens for real, if that makes sense. So, I don't know. I think it ends up becoming something, I think, much, much bigger. And I think ultimately, for most of the movies I've made, people want to be bigger than life. I think some people who don't feel fulfilled or are interested in being in a documentary, and especially if they've watched my past stuff, they know what they're sort of getting themselves into. And it's an invitation to kind of do this, collaborate in this artistic experience, where I'm showing them clips and sequences, and over the course of the 3 years, I'll show, I'll kind of lay out, what we've captured and how the images are going to be assimilated. It's very different than just sort of this extractive process of just like showing up in someone's life, capturing some stuff, not saying anything to them, and then figuring it out in the edit later.
Mhm. I'm glad you mentioned earlier the Succession thing, because for me, I saw that the show was coming early in the month. I hadn't heard like a ton, and I was just like, saw it was coming to streaming. Then I saw on the front page of Max, I'm like, done. I'll watch it. This looks interesting. So I watch it, and then after I saw it, I saw all these comps to Succession. And for me, when I see that, and if I was a filmmaker of any medium, doesn't matter, if I saw like people comparing my show or anything to Succession, I don't know if I would be excited or if I would be like, don't do that. Like, don't put an expectation like that on me or any product I have.
No, yeah, I mean it's funny. Look, it's like ultimately it's sort of a, like, the show is there's nothing really about this show that shares anything like tonally or thematically with Succession. I mean, Succession is a brilliant show, and it's a scripted show, and it's based on a lot of real people. But this, I mean, it's just funny. I mean, ultimately, the drama that is in our show is it's a Succession story, but there are many other Succession stories than just the
Exactly.
fucking show Succession. Like, I mean, if you look at any small business basically around America, most of them, my parents' small business included, they're they're lawyers. Like a lot of these places are run by people who are old or getting older now. And, I was just talking to someone yesterday who was telling me that they like, that their grandpa, who's 93 years old, is like a car parts manufacturer, and he has a company of about 400 people in somewhere in Ohio. And like literally the same drama of like who's going to take over this place is playing out in that exact business. So like this story ultimately is not specific in some ways to just the Ren Faire. I mean, it is in the sense that it happened there, but the events of this story and like the desires of these people, the people that want to have the power, then the desire for George, for like, what is my life? Is my life meaningless without all of this control I have over all these people? That story is fucking everywhere. And so I
Yeah.
think it's ultimately, look, like whatever you got to do to get the show seen by people. But I totally agree. When the Succession comparisons were happening, I was or I was reading some people being like the filmmakers intentionally like rejiggered some of the events of the series to fit the archetypes of Succession. I'm like, dude, I didn't even see Succession until after I finished.
You've already been there, yeah.
And mostly because I was just sort of like I was like, I don't really want to have this in my head while I'm doing this. But anyway, yeah. But I'm,
media loves doing that though.
Yeah.
It's like if they see one thing, they need to digest it through the lens of another thing that they're more familiar with. It'll happen with everything, but yeah, that's one where I saw it and I'm like, if that was my product, I'd be like, please don't say that. Watch it with an independent lens, if that makes sense.
That's good. Look, it's in some ways too. It's sort of like I made a film that came out this year also called Sperm Worlds. It came out in March, and FX put that out. And I feel like that's a movie where there really aren't any comps. It's hard to describe what that film is even really about. You just kind of have to see it. And I think the result of that is that it came out and there was very little people, no one was really talking about it. And, I would have taken I don't know, some stupid comparison maybe to that movie just to get people to see it. But I do think you're right that I think ultimately like people, this Ren Faire is I think similar to Sperm World, there really aren't many comps that I feel like, at least that are nonfiction shows or films, that really match what ends up happening in the series and sort of the formal. And it's a lot of things that I'm putting in like a blending machine. It's like I got a lot of Vanderpump Rules in there. I got a lot of There Will Be Blood in there. I got a lot of Demon Lover in there. Like there's a lot of different things that were in my head when I was making this. There's a lot of Kiarostami in there, to me at least. Yeah.
That's funny. So what was stylistically when I was watching the show, I kind of got like, I think vibes of like 80s fantasy movies. You know what I mean? Like Never Ending Story, Dark Crystal, Excalibur, like Legend. What type of vibe were you going through for? Because like I think it looked so interesting, so different from like any other documentary I'd ever seen. And that like that plus the music, I think was a beautiful, perfect match. Like that like dark, sort of like twisted feel to it. I loved it. So like what were you kind of going for with that?
Well, I mean, a lot of well, thank you for saying that about the music and the look of it. My composer Ari Belusian, I've worked with him now on on Sperm World and Some Kind of Heaven, and a short film and this, and he's brilliant. I mean, I think every time he never composes the picture. He just takes ideas, or he'll watch footage of a specific person and he'll just start kind of like these melodies will sort of pour out of him. I think with the music, we were trying to conjure this sort of Bernard Herrmann, like North by Northwest. There's this one track called Farewell / The Reunion. And I kept listening to that over and over again because it really reminded me of George and sort of this like lonely palatial existence he has. And he's a Californian, he's not a Texan. And he's so like far removed from anyone. Like there is this, I don't know, like weirdly haunted, like Hitchcockian magic, I think, to the way he talks and the way he operates, and even the way he the way he just goes and engages with his staff. It all feels like this very tragic but very classical kind of Hollywood thing. So there was that. I mean, in terms of the look of it, I was constantly just thinking about like, how do I make something where the audience isn't gawking at, the people of the world here. And, in my first film, Some Kind of Heaven, it was all tripod, locked off, composed frames. Sperm World, similar, but like aesthetically, the colors are different. With this, I was like, I think we need to kind of feel the move. Like we need to move with the people that are performing there. And we just need to keep this sense of like, if you give people too much time to actually slow down and look at the image and sort of start questioning, well, oh, that's so funny. Look at that, overweight person who's like, scantily clad in the center, the right side of the frame. It's like, to me, that's not why we're there telling the story. I mean, I think there are, to me, what I wanted to do is I wanted to like immerse the audience in the perspective of one of the performers there, and like what it actually feels like to be part of like an immersive living fantasy. And so a lot of it was then like, okay, well, maybe we'll use some steady cam. We'll do that. Okay. What else can we do? I got these anamorphic, these lenses called the Cinevisions, which are like really kind of these old anamorphic lenses. And I thought, like it felt perfect in a way to like photograph all of the historical anachronisms and shit that were going on there. Like seeing someone in a Freddy mask, like next to someone who's like in this ornate, like, I don't know, fucking
like Renaissance gear.
Yeah, exactly. Like all of it. So I wanted to treat it as seriously as everyone in it, treated it, and never betray, that moment. That's why even in the second episode, it's really silly. But when that guy, the beefeater, is going down, he's doing all these like farty mouth noises to someone. Like,
That was, I don't think I've ever expected anything less. He had such a nice little speech to the guy before him, and then just that.
Yeah, they got, I was just sort of like, we gotta, like, that's part of the world there too. This sort of like Monty Python, kind of this this very silly just absurdism that goes on there. So I wanted to kind of put all of it in there. But yeah, Excalibur, Legends, Kingdom of Heaven, even very different. But I was like interested in all the movement there. Obviously,
wow, yes. Now I'm thinking of
know?
Kingdom of Heaven. Some of those shots out in the desert, they had like that similar sort of like camera feel to it for sure.
Yes. Yeah, and then like, I was interested in just like looking at different versions of King Lear because Jeff kept talking about it so much. So we were watching Ran, the Kurosawa movie.
Oh yeah, got that right up there. On the Criterion,
okay.
yeah.
Boom.
Great movie.
And then, Demon Lover really was the main one, like the first hour and a half or 45 minutes of that movie. To me, it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's the Olivier Assayas movie. It's great. But it's basically like a corporate drama or this corporate thriller that's set in the world of hentai. And so it's a very like,
I'm adding that to the list right now.
It's great. Yeah, it's so fucking weird, but it really feels another example of like a genre movie, or like it feels like a James Bond thriller, and you have no idea. Like it's like, these are corporate spies stealing information from each other, and then about 30 minutes into it, it's revealed that the business, the industry that they're in is hentai. I just thought it was so it's so funny, but it's never like Olivier has said, he never slows down for you to actually like laugh at the absurdity of it all. He just he keeps you moving as with each of the characters as they're increasingly putting and pinning things onto each other to try and succeed. Yeah.
Speaking of absurd, how many energy drinks did you see Louis chug over the course of your time there?
I mean, man, like hundreds. It's funny. I don't know if you saw, there's this Vanity Fair just did like an interview with Darla and Jeff and Louis, and they fact checked the energy drink things. They couldn't believe, they thought I was like, I feel like some of the insinuations were like, did you have Louis drink all this stuff? Anyway, if you look at the Vanity Fair article, Louis says here, this is what they say. The most personal detail Louis offers is that he typically consumes between 8 and 14 energy drinks a day, compared to just 2 or 3 off season.
Oh my God. How does he not die? That's like just like trillions of milligrams of caffeine. That's insane.
No, I mean, dude, he's hardcore. He does not slow down. And even like his voice is, I mean, he talks so fast. Like there are moments where he had to slow down his voice to just actually, like, because the HBO executives, when we would show cuts, they just they could not follow anything he was saying. It felt like, especially when he's off camera. So most times when he's off camera, it's like I've slowed down his voice maybe by like 2 or maybe 1.5%, just so you can like fully kind of understand it a little bit better. But no, he's crazy. Yeah,
the chugging was insane. He was like shotgunning these Red Bulls like underneath the thing. I was like, hey, he's gonna stop drinking it now, right? He's gonna stop drinking. He just kept going. It was crazy. What's something about Renaissance fairs that maybe people don't know? Because for me, like my understanding of it is that people that go to it, it's kind of like I thought it was like a kind of like it's like a nerdy thing that people like to do, and like I love that stuff too. I just never been to one. But then as I grew up, the understanding was it became more of like a prelim to an orgy, because like people are typically very reserved, and then they go to this thing and it's all very like-minded people, and like
Yeah.
they're all like don't get to be around these people at all during their day-to-day lives, but now they're all together and they're all just kind of like get the freak on, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, man, it's a pretty, the culture itself, especially that Renaissance fair, like all of the performers and the artists and the vendors, like they have a special, it's a very special thing, not just for them, but just like being an observer. It was amazing. Like there's so much stuff we shot that didn't make, you know, the final cut. But there were so many moments of just sort of the extended like town that George built, and for all of these artists that probably, like, I don't know what they would be doing if they weren't living there or and continuing to kind of live cheaply and work in peace. I mean, in a lot of ways, again, it feels like the closest thing to like what, yeah, like what a fiefdom would be like back in the
Yeah.
day. But there's different things. I mean, the intentions of like, yeah, there's different types of patrons too. There's a whole other dimension to the story that we don't really talk, you know, we don't cover as much in this. That's about the campground, which is its own like lawless place that a lot of other crazy shit happens in. And to me, it was always like, that's a whole separate story. And to me, the story of George really acting with impunity, you know, just watching as he more or less goes about his day and, you know, more kind of inflicts cruelty on the people that work for him. I think there's something so much more active and present tense and disturbing about that than maybe and I think ultimately, like, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like time has, like, we've moved a long way in the last few years. I feel like we're no longer at this place anymore when you're trying to hold an institution accountable. I think just like a cut and paste sort of you know, regurgitation of like news headlines of what's happened at that, you know, at those places is not the most effective way to hold an institution accountable ultimately. And what I think really what like the power and the tools of cinema can provide is being like showing the behavior continuing and showing George, you know, talk about his erection with one of his assistants, or you know, just the way he talks about taking a shit or a pee, you know, and every time you get laid, you got to read the book. You know, it's like there's this dimension to which if you read that in an article versus seeing it up close, there's just immediacy to it that's incredibly kind of disturbing. And so I know, I think like not to say that, you know, the whole culture there is that. I think it's like it's a Darla says this, the fair sort of succeeds in spite of George in a way, and I think that's true. I think like when you go there, if you just went as a patron, you would probably never know that any of the stuff behind the scenes was happening, and so it's amazing that that's the case. It's a really well-oiled machine, in that, you know, to make the show happen.
Super compelling. I mean, I think the smile George gives, like after delivering like one of the most like heinous like raps against someone you'd ever seen, and he's just like so like old man like creepy like smile. It's very, I don't know, disturbing is the best way to put it, but that's what makes it so compelling. At least I think
Well, yeah, it
so.
reminds me a lot of like, you know, Noah Cross in Chinatown when he says
Yeah,
like people are capable of anything. Um,
it's
it's that moment where he turns from being like kind of a amiable, eccentric, elderly man to someone who's truly terrifying. And I think that's like really what happens over the course of the show. The closer George gets to actually getting rid of the thing that gives his life meaning, the more deranged he becomes to the people that work for him and everyone around him.
So again, super compelling. Be sure to check it out. I do have some like general questions about documentaries in general. Like I've interviewed people that were subjects of documentaries before. Like I think I did Alex Honnold a few times, a couple other guys. But as far as like creating one, walk me through like what the process is for choosing a documentary and subject. Because in my mind, like what happens if you dive in and it's just not as interesting as you hoped, or you don't have
Yeah.
like the access that you hoped you had, or it's not working out. Like what's the process for choosing?
Well, it's interesting. It's like, you know, I think with this one, we knew that George was the reason to really be making this, right? I think, and like, if we couldn't get to George, then I think it would provide a really massive wrench and sort of the kind of panoramic portrait of him, and then also like the people vying for his position. But I think a lot of it just goes back to me, at least. It's like wants and obstacles. You know, I go to if I start talking to someone, and I have usually like what I do is I start with a setting. So with Sperm World, it was this like digital, you know, these Facebook forums where people, you know, the unregulated sperm marketplace where men would donate their sperm for free to women who like were desperately trying to get pregnant and didn't work out. And that, you know, for that and for the villages, it was really like I talked to a lot of people. I would let them know what I found to be interesting about them. I, you know, disclose my aims as a filmmaker. I want to make a movie about you. This is probably how it's going to go. I want to focus on this exact conflict that I see you're going through. And can you walk me through that? Right. If people are sort of like, I don't want to talk about that, or, you know, or they're not aligned with me on the thing I'm interested in, then I just won't make the film. And that's happened a few times before. In the case of like this project, I didn't start with the setting. It was the first time I was really handed like a story, which was George is 86 years old. What's going to happen to him in this whole fair once he's no longer in power? And then of course, it changed as we were going along. And I think it was terrifying because, you know, the way we were able to get this thing financed was we had to commit to making a series out of it. And I knew that, unlike probably the other series that HBO makes, like I knew that I didn't really want to make something that was like archival based or past tense, because the story that was playing out in front of us was so interesting. But I also knew it was going to take a long fucking time to do it. So I making it, you know, a 3-parter thing allowed me to get like the 108 or 9 days that we had, you know, and over the course of the 3-year period. But it really, boiling it back down though, it really goes back to wants and obstacles. It's like, what do you want? Can you clearly articulate it? Is it an internal thing? Is it an external thing? Do you want to be the king of the fair? Okay, but like, what do you really want? What is it? Why do you want that? For Jeff, it's almost like a validation of an affirmation of the sacrifices he's given to this place. He's basically devoted his entire life, 43 years of his life there. And then the obstacles, what's blocking him? Or the, you know, or them? What are they doing? What is stopping them from achieving their goals? And if those 2 questions that are very basic can be answered, then I know, at the very least, I have something I can start filming. And that inherent sort of conflict that can come about from like someone's desire and the gulf between achieving it. I know that I'll have a movie to make, and that will probably, you know, take me along like that there's a question that needs to be answered, and it will, and I'll have a roadmap.
So it's kind of interesting you mentioned the roadmap too, because like another thing I always wonder with documentaries, specifically about ones that are about something that's actively still happening. It's like, how do you know when to end? Like, how do you know when you're finished? Because stuff is still evolving, it's still happening. I think if I was making it, I'd be constantly worried, like, well, what if I stop and start wrapping shit up now? What if something crazy happens like in a month from now? Like, how do you know when to stop, basically?
Well, usually I just run out of money, and that's
Yeah.
that's what ends up happening. But I mean, look, yeah, in terms of like, I think in terms of plotting, you know, ultimately after you start shooting something, I work with my editors, Daniel Garber on Sperm World, and Max Allman and Nicholas Nasmi on Ren Faire. Like, the edit is going concurrently with while we're shooting, and so we're constantly talking about like those 3, you know, like a character arc again comes from this question, the design of like what someone wants and what's stopping them. And ultimately Renfair, that same thing that George, you know, George says, what is a king without his kingdom? He's nothing. And then by the end, I asked him the same question again. He said he's free. And so, or sorry, the other way around. He said he's free at the beginning, and you know, you're watching him try to get rid of it. And then by the end, he says he's nothing because he's come to the realization he needs it. And so there is this sort of thing where like, of course we could have kept shooting, and, you know, even right now, like there's a lot of developments that are happening there that are super interesting. But I think ultimately like that when you're editing something, you want to come up with a design, hopefully with the material you've actually filmed, then also like, you know, for things that you miss, you go back and you pick stuff up. But you want to create something that hopefully is airtight enough, that has its own kind of omniscience, that isn't just documenting reality, but really like kind of converting reality into cinema. And that I think is really the challenge and the trick of all this stuff. It's like seeing what is the potential of what's real and what's there, and then coming up with some kind of way to assimilate all of it by the end.
Mhm. I think you've worked with two of the more interesting minds, or I guess three of the more interesting minds in cinema, with the Safdie brothers with this, who we've interviewed before. They're awesome, so much fun. And then Aronofsky was some kind of heaven as well. What makes you click with these guys? And is there a filmmaker that you'd like to collaborate with on a different documentary, whatever your next one may be?
Wow. Well, I mean, look, a lot of it, I feel so fortunate to work with like people whose work I love. With Darren Aronofsky, it was really like he took a chance on me, and I'll never forget that. And I feel endless gratitude towards him, because I cold emailed him and had started shooting, you know, a bunch of stuff, had no idea what to do, and he kind of allowed me to, you know, he through him I was able to get financed to make the movie. And with Josh and Ronnie, and you know, Benny a little bit, and Eli Bush and Danny Bernfeld at Alara, it was a little. I mean, I love the documentaries that Josh and Benny had made, and I love their sort of their what they do, which is like trying to create, you know, convert real life into fiction in a way. And I feel like I'm kind of coming at it from the opposite end. I'm trying to take real, you know, I'm trying to take fiction and kind of or fictional techniques and use those to express real life. So I don't know what it is. I don't know. I think part of it is just like this attempt again to like make real life cinematic and convert elements of real life into cinema, which is a mission that doesn't come from me. It comes really back from like the tradition of Iranian cinema, like Kiarostami, like I was saying before.
Mhm.
And I think like the thing that I guess I'm trying to do is just take what other people have done before and make it maybe more entertaining, and give it some of the kind of familiar, you know, things people can hang on to in order to hopefully actually experience a whole other kind of truth. Like I think Jeff's performance in this, if you watch the series over and over again, which I have done, obviously, because I'm, you know, and making it, his performance as a documentary subject is so heartbreaking and fascinating, and every choice he's making, even when he's playing things up to the camera, it's like it's an expression of pain in a way. And I think that, like, and it's a pain he owns. It's not like a pain like, oh, why are you filming this? He's like, I want you to film this, and this is what I'm feeling right now. And he's so theatrical that it's so different. So I think there's something in that mission, I guess, that like both Darren really liked, you know, and I really loved working with him on Some Kind of Heaven. And with Alara, Josh and Ronnie, you know, Ronnie Bronstein is really the main person I worked with there.
Mhm.
He really clicked, and I plan to keep working with those guys again. But in terms of other filmmakers, I plan, you know, I'd like to work with. I don't know. I mean, who knows? I'd love to work with like it'd be cool to work with like John Taffer, or like, you know, I mean, really, yeah, John Taffer, to me, like from Bar Rescue, I find
Yeah,
him
not the name I would have thought.
fascinating. I think he's so fucking interesting. I think Chris Hansen's also a really interesting person too. Like, and of course I love, like, I'm a very, you know, I'm good friends with Nathan Fielder. And I
Mhm.
love his work so much.
I just turned someone
All
on
them
to
really-
How To with John Wilson as well. That's another guy whose documentary work I just find just fascinating.
he's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if I were to, just based on the way that you described your approach to it, as far as like grafting out like cinematic techniques onto a documentary, doing the inverse thing with the Safdies and Aaron, or I guess like the Safdie more. Like, how about Chloe Zhao or Sean Baker? Because those are
I love
two people
them.
who do that.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Fantastic filmmakers. I mean, yeah, both of them are brilliant. And I mean, Sean, I'd love to work with him. I'd love to work with Chloe too. You know, yeah. But what they do is it's a different, I feel like, continuum. But I feel like they're all like Josh and Benny and Ronnie and yeah, Sean, Chloe Zhao, I think Nathan Fielder, I think like Jason Wallner, Sasha Baron Cohen, I think John Wilson, Tim Heidecker with
Mhm.
his like on cinema stuff. I think there's this
Oh, so
whole
good.
sort of like landscape of people that are using reality in weird and interesting ways to make these like dioramas of like the human experience. And I think to me it's just great. And it's sort of like, why not? The thing I'm trying to do, I guess, is like it's like, can I make something equally as cinematic as the work that all of those amazing filmmakers are making, but can I do it with real people and real stories, um, and you know, and honor the truth of what they're going through, but also cinematically represent it. And that's sort of the that's the quest. But I love what like Chloe Zhao did with like The Rider and
Yeah.
My Brother Taught Me, and Sean Baker, I thought Red Rocket was just like fucking unbelievable. It was like a
Slam dunk. So good.
masterpiece. Can't wait to see the new one.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait. Outside of obviously your own, what would be a documentary that you think everyone should watch? I think because if I get asked that, because we'll get asked like for certain genres, hey, I'm looking for this and look for that. I usually say recently it would be like Three Identical Strangers would be the one where I'm like, wow, that was really moving. But what's one
Yeah,
for you where you're like, hey, you're looking for a documentary, not one of mine. This is what you should watch.
man, fuck. Well, I feel like in terms of like my favorite docs of all time, I love Wiener. The movie from, when was it, like few years ago. And I actually worked with those filmmakers on Sperm World 2016. I think Wiener is like a masterpiece, and I think it really is like it goes down, I think, in like one of the great movies of the 21st century, in my opinion. And it feels like, to me, it has a lot in common with a movie like Crumb, which is another one that I absolutely adore, which is like a really fantastic character study and expression of someone's pain through the lens of a filmmaker that they sort of know, like in Wiener. One of the directors was working with him on his campaign. With Crumb, it's Terry Zwigoff, who's was close friends with our Crumb. So there's this really interesting relationship between like subject and camera, and of course they're doing some sort of performance. In some cases they're aware of it, in some cases they're not. Um, and it's just like yeah, it both of them are just, I feel like, companion pieces of some kind. And then I guess if you wanted to go further back, I think like, I think Close Up, I think A Taste of Cherry, I think I loved Certified Copy, that the fiction film that Kiarostami made. And I love Hello Cinema, that Moshe Makhmalbaf made, that was
Let's see
also
that.
sort of another I think it's called Salam Cinema, is like the Iranian title of it. I love
All right,
Dark
yeah.
Days, the Mark Singer movie. Um, there's so much good shit. Robert Greene, who I feel like is also doing like the Kiarostami, I mean, I don't know if he would call it that, but like Joshua Oppenheimer, both of those filmmakers, I feel like, are very much interested in like the semiotics of like what a camera can, how it can manipulate reality, and finding ways to explore like different dimensions of the human psyche through acknowledging how fake things become when a camera is present. Um, there's a new film that's coming out that that this filmmaker Lana Wilson made. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's
What's it
like one
called?
of the best things I've seen all year. Uh, it's called Look Into My Eyes.
Okay, look into my
I
eyes.
thought it was just like amazing. I saw it at a film festival, and I thought it was truly brilliant. I think A24 is putting it out. It's about a bunch of psychics. Um,
Oh, very cool.
yeah, I feel like when that comes out, I can imagine a lot of people wanting to get into it. It's like very, very, very beautiful and fucked up and funny, and um very non-judgmental sort of look at like a strange, you know, profession, where it seems like everyone may be like winging it, but yet they're they're doing it for a reason. That like they really need it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's the other thing to me. It's just sort of like movies that feel like they're offering really complicated slices of life, like even the Carter documentary that Adam Bahalo, who made the Telemarketers show, made when he was younger. When movies are able to just like present really fucked up and like morally, ethically complicated slices and slivers of life and not really offer any judgment and ask you as the viewer to kind of formulate your own opinion, that to me is like why documentaries should exist. That's what makes the argument for their why we should have them as a film going populace. I think the other form of documentary, which I know a lot of people like, which is sort of the like Wikipedia version of things. It's like okay, this thing happened in the news. Do you want to hear about it? Here it is, in like a perfectly wrapped up 85-minute film. To me, I'm less interested in those films because I'd rather just read an article, if that's the case, not to say like, Ken Burns has his own magical mastery of what he does. But I just feel like around, that there's a weird, I don't know why this is, but I feel like a lot of people just generally, because of the documentaries they're more, I think, commonly seeing, their relationship with what's real and like a documentary is totally askew. But anyway, I'm rambling.
No, I hear you. Yeah, I think you raise a good point too, because the sort of presenting it without the agenda or judgment. There's actually like a cool line in Civil War about that. I think it was like because like one of the characters was having like ethical issues with what was happening, and like there's like, hey, look, we just report it. We're just reporting it.
Yes.
We let
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
people like make their
I
own
love Civil
calls on
War,
it.
man. I thought it was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting quotes in that, and I think that one really, I'm butchering it, but it was a really interesting one. But yeah, that's what I like about this. Been loved Ren Faire. Make sure to check it out. Also, I feel like this is just a more of a random, I think, procedural thing. I don't know that I've ever seen a 3-part series before. I don't know what it is. The number 3 in my head. I
Really?
feel like they always like stuff in
Yeah.
even numbers for whatever reason. I don't think I've ever seen one in a 3-part, and man, it's fucking great, man. I really, really loved it. So make sure you check out Renfair. It's all on Max right now. It's awesome, super interesting. This is going to be part of an episode. I was just telling my co-host about it, raving about it. He's going to watch it as well.
Well, thank you, man. I hope you can edit me down because I fucking
No,
rambled
this is
my
good.
ass off. Too much coffee, too little sleep. But thanks for
No,
having
we're
me.
all film nerds here. Like, did you? I don't know if you saw. Did you see that fight at the Paris theater?
Oh my God, yeah, amazing.
You read the story behind it's
Dude,
crazy.
it's like the convergence of my two favorite things, film and like fight videos. For some
Yes.
reason, I'm addicted to watching like knockout videos. I just get served them all the time on Twitter. I'm
Yeah.
like a very confrontational person in a good way. I think like think conflict can lead to good solutions when you talk things out. But I'm a very like physically I'm a terrified like I don't like anytime I've ever been in a situation that turns sour and the physical, there's the threat of violence. I cower, fully cower. So maybe there's this like weird aspirational thing of just wishing I could be invincible or something. But anyway, I love that whole thread was crazy.
It was so funny. And I was like that I was talking to a host about it. I was like, I think that out of all the fans, Ari Aster's is maybe the one I wouldn't want to fuck with because these guys are addicted to grief. They all they just want to watch this like just grief-stricken stories every day. You don't want to fuck with these guys. And they were
Yeah.
going at it.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was whole thing was insane.
Yeah. But thanks again for stopping by. Love it again. Make sure to check out Renfair and we be watching you to I'm gonna try and quote a Star Wars guy here. Was it? We'll be watching your career with great interest.
Well, hey, thank you, brother.